Are recording. Welcome to KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit digital voice, telling the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. I'm Ruth Baum-Biggis, and KC Cares is proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation. We're living in kind of crazy times between COVID and some civil unrest, etc. But the organization we're featuring is working all the time to bring justice, and that's the Midwest Innocence Project. And we are honored to be joined by Tricia Rojo Bushnell, who's the executive director, and Will Shields, who is, of course, a Kansas City Chiefs favorite, NFL Hall of Famer, and who is co-chairing MIP's virtual gala coming up, Faces of Innocence. So both of you, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I'm just here as her backup. I'm just letting you know that right now.
Yeah, but you've got all the great visuals going on, so it's perfect. Tricia, if you'll give us a snapshot of what the organization is and what you do that's so important.
Yeah, so the Midwest Innocence Project represents people convicted of crimes they did not commit, and we work to bring them home and change the policies and systems and structures that put them in prison in the first place. So it's part of direct services of getting folks home, but also education and changing the system as we know it to make the world more just and equitable for everyone.
Those are pretty lofty goals. How do you go about doing that?
That's a great question. I mean, I think like any lofty goal, right? You start where you can start and what you know. So for us, we start by working with directly impacted individuals who were convicted of crimes they didn't commit. And we investigate their cases. We figure out what really happened if we can, or where things went really wrong. And then we go into court and we litigate to bring them home. But in that process, it becomes really apparent all of the different flaws of our criminal legal system. Whether some of those flaws are things like needing eyewitness identification reform, or whether they're really large things like systemic racism, right? And so when someone comes home, we have to talk about what were the things that put them there in the first place, and then what are the specific policy initiatives or structural changes that we can be making to do that. And so we've done things like pass eyewitness identification reform, right? We've done things like pass a law that provides for compensation for people who have been wrongfully convicted in the state of Kansas. But we are also know that a lot of it involves just speaking up and speaking out when we see injustice, which is something that I think we're talking about now as a society, but it's something that we've been proud that we've been doing throughout our existence.
How long has the organization been around? Can you also share a little bit of the history and the roots of it?
Yeah, so MIP was born around 2005, but a little bit earlier than that. But we came about as a clinic at the University of Missouri, Kansas City Law School. In essence, a clinic is like a residency for doctors, right? It's where young law students work under the supervision of another lawyer and represent real clients. And so we were a clinic born in the law school, and we then became an independent nonprofit. And now we have partners. We actually work in 5 states: in Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and Arkansas. And we have partners in most of those locations. So we work with UMKC School of Law, University of Missouri School of Law, KU School of Law, the Iowa State Public Defender's Wrongful Conviction Division, and we're also now have a partner at the MacArthur Justice Center in St. Louis. So lots of different folks helping us all do the same mission.
Your reach is really broad. Tell us, how do you make that happen? I mean, it's not just one person.
Well, in terms of the reach locationally, right, I think there are a lot of things that we get by being a regional organization. So every innocence organization is independent. Folks may have heard of places like the Innocence Project in New York, for example, but we're all independent and independently funded. So the Midwest Innocence Project, we work in our region, and I think there are benefits to being a regional organization. We can see issues that are present in one state or the way things are being done well in one state, and then go and ask and say, look what's happening in our neighbors, we can change this here. And we can also start to understand why are things different, right? We can look at the state of Iowa and we can say, Iowa has the highest level of racial disparities for sentencing. So that means Black folks in Iowa have it worse when it comes to sentence disparities than any other state in the country. And I think we don't talk about that. We don't think about that. When people talk about that, they wouldn't think of Iowa, right? They think of like somewhere probably else in one of the southern states. So why is that? And so we have to look at our history and we have to talk about what led to that. We have to look at things like the Great Migration of folks leaving the South after Reconstruction to flee racial terror lynching and landing in Iowa and what that meant for communities, and then what those communities, those predominantly white communities, how they responded to it. And so in our work, what we also do when we're looking at cases is we also are saying, what are the hallmarks of a wrongful conviction, including the racial hallmarks of a wrongful conviction? Things that we can see when we look are things like, was there an interracial relationship such that society targeted someone because they didn't feel that that was an appropriate thing? Was this someone who was a Black or brown person coming into a predominantly white area that they viewed as a threat to the way that they view their community? And we can look at those and then see how people are pinpointed and targeted and then work to change that system by addressing that. But we have to look at that history and we have to talk about it. And it's something that we do. One of our clients who was released in Arkansas most recently, it was him and 3 other co-defendants. All of them were Black folks in a really small town called Fordyce, Arkansas. And they were framed, quite frankly, framed. There was not a single piece of evidence against them that was legitimate. These were individuals who did not know each other, but there were reasons that they were being targeted, and it was because of the communities that they were from. That prosecutor who sat on that case, that was part of that withheld evidence, that manufactured evidence, is now an Arkansas Supreme Court judge. So we have to be able to talk about where we were, where we're going, and what those values are, or we're not going to change the system.
I want to ask Will, how and why did you get involved?
Oh no, we lost. He's connecting.
Technology, that's what the fun is. Will's tuned in now, I'm hoping.
I am back.
Yay, yay. How did you get involved and why did you get involved with Midwest Innocence Project?
Well, you know, it actually was my son's best friend. His dad, actually, Mr. Reed, sort of hit me up and goes, "Well, I know you do a lot of different things in the community. Have you ever heard of the MIP program?" And I was like, "Well, what's the MIP program?" He's like, "The Midwest Innocence Project." And I was like, "You know, I've seen stories, I've read different things, but I really don't know exactly what they do." And he goes, "You need to come and check it out and see what they do and see how they get things done." And, you know, just walking in the room and actually listening and hearing all the new things that were going on and all the things that they've been doing, it's amazing. And so I was like, "Well, how can I be involved? How can I be a part of it? How can I help?" And he goes, "Well, you know, I got this idea about you guys being co-chair." And I was like, "Oh, really?" He's like, "Oh, okay, being co-chair. What does that mean?" He's like, "Well, you don't have to do much, but," you know, so he started naming out the list of different things. But the thing of it is that once you sit and listen and see what they do and all the things and all the hard work that they put into it and understanding all the things that go on, because some of the simple things, as being an African-American man, you assume that you know. You don't know if you've never been in those situations. You don't know unless you've been put in those shoes. You don't know, you know what to avoid if you try to avoid different things. But some of the other things that goes on, you don't really are privy to unless you're right next to it, unless you've been there, you know, been a part of that, everything else. And to me, just that learning process of, you know, little nuances within the rules and regulations of what is done and how it's done, you have no clue because, you know, you've been told your whole life, avoid it by all costs, by all means, by all things, avoid everything you can. So to sit there in the room and listen to the stories and listen to the different guys and listen to, you know, Ricky talks about it, you know, him being, you know, where he was at and all the different things that he went through. It's just even beyond your own fathom of your mind of what they have to try to figure out together. And it's amazing some of the work that they do. So I was like, yeah, I have to be a part of it. I have to support it. I have to find a way that I can pull as many people as I can because there's a lot of things we don't understand. And, until you've actually been a part of it, lived it, and been there, it's tough, because I say anyone can fall into those realms regardless of what it is, just by being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's the whole key. You never know what that wrong place is going to be, but you can fall into a situation that you can't control. And if you don't have the means and the wherewithal of knowing what to do, what to ask for, what to push for, then you fall into that, that hole, and it makes it tough. And I think that's what makes this so amazing, of how they go through the crux of finding all the little information, all the little details, looking at it at all the different angles to, help those that have been, falsely accused and falsely imprisoned to get free. And I was like, I got to do whatever I can to get as many people and to understand that, it's not a perfect system, but we still understand how the system works, and being able to figure out those things that weren't perfect, how to fix those things that were wrong.
And of course, we're referring to your Faces of Innocence Gala, which is coming up on July 30th. Tricia, let's talk a little bit about how you did a pivot in the land of COVID.
Sure. I mean, like many nonprofits, right? We were sort of faced with this question of, what do you do when your largest fundraising event can't take place? So traditionally, our Faces of Innocence Gala has taken place in April. It's our largest event. Usually around 800 to 900 people come, and it raises a significant portion, nearly 40% of our budget. We're in a particularly difficult nonprofit area where we don't fall under health and human services and education and other types of things where there's foundational support or other types of grants. So events and our donors, our individual donors and sponsors, are the biggest thing for us. So when we knew we weren't going to be able to have an event, the question was, well, what could we do next? And so we've decided ultimately to go virtual. And we're really excited about it because it's now open to everyone. And we're really, we've been limited by space and capacity, and who could afford to come to our gala before? And now, for the first time, folks across our whole region, all 5 states, can start to learn about who we are, the work that we do, and how grateful we are to have them in our community. So, it is a pivot. I think it takes everyone a second to reassess, but it's also actually a really big opportunity to share the stories of the folks that we are lucky enough to serve every day to everyone.
Well, I think it's amazing that you've decided to make it free. So how do you fundraise? That was the goal of the gala, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been incredibly lucky that all of our sponsors who had already signed on for the gala continued to commit to sponsoring the virtual event. So our sponsors were all still there. And then certainly we're hoping that folks will donate when they see that the work that we do and the need that is there for their support. And that's the question. But we've had more interest and more connection to our community than ever. And I think that that's a really exciting thing to think about. Like, now that we're learning other ways to communicate and be closer, what an opportunity.
Well, I'm excited because the simple fact of it is that we can get outside of the box of just the region that we're in, so that we could be the first to sort of go worldwide in the sense of understanding of what's going on, and get an hour of looking into different issues, different things, different ways of handling things, and opening people's eyes. Those that are searching for information, there's information there to be had, and it's free. Just go and log in and be a part of it, and just follow. And that's the whole key. Just, go out and find and search all the information and get reputable sources, which this is one that basically can tell you, hey, everything that's put out, that's said, has been done and proven over and over again. And to me, that's the most important piece of being able to educate more people of what's going on. And I think it's a broader scope of being able to say, now I can tell my friends in different parts of the country or Jersey or whatever, hey, you need to go and check this out. I know you had a lot of Zoom meetings before, but this is one that you have to go to and check out, because you're going to learn a lot of great information.
Now you're moving forward at the event, though, with your honors and with your guest speaker as well?
Yes. So we traditionally have awards that we've been giving out, and we're really lucky that our award recipients will still be able to be honored virtually, and everyone will get to see that, which is also great. I think everyone can appreciate even more. So our award recipients this year include Ellen Sooney, Rod Uphoff, and Steve Weinberg from UMKC, University of Missouri School of Law, and the School of Journalism, who were sort of our three original founders and vision for how we came together and created the program that we are, that is so many partnerships, and to also have them see what we've become, right, I think is a really powerful moment. Our other award recipient is an attorney named Cindy Dodge, who worked pro bono to represent Ricky Kidd, who was one of our clients who came home last September. So Ricky Kidd was freed in Kansas City after serving 23 years for a crime he didn't commit. And I think one of the important things about Cindy is she was a prosecutor formerly who felt so strongly that she had to act, that even now as a defense attorney, she did all of this work for free. And so to have other folks learn about that and know that will be wonderful. And our keynote speaker is, again, Dr. Yusuf Salam of the Exonerated Five, that many folks may know from When They See Us, the Netflix series. Dr. Salam and 4 others were convicted in what was known as the Central Park Jogger case before they were later exonerated. He'll be joining us and he'll be giving a keynote, but then he will also be joining me and Will so that I can ask them questions and we can be more interactive, because we want to know, what do folks want to ask Will and Dr. Salam if they had access? And so that's what we're really excited about, is how can we make this as accessible to as many people as possible. And along with that, I just want to clarify, we also will have an American Sign Language interpreter and closed captioning for our event, because we are learning that there are communities that are being disempowered from learning how to even fight injustice in their own communities because we aren't giving them access to that information. And in fact, in American Sign Language, there isn't even a known sign for prosecutor or exonerated.
Oh
right?
My gosh,
so,
that's wild.
Exactly. And so when we learned that, and we've been really grateful to the organizations who have helped us learn that, it's really important to us that we are able to reach folks to help give them the tools they need to continue fighting for justice.
I love that you seem to be working as a team, even though we all can't be within 6 feet of each other. And I should clarify that we are all at a safe distance right now, that nobody is violating things. We're not wearing masks, but I want to assure that our listeners and viewers know that. Will, for you and Senya, you get asked to do so many things. Why did this jump out at you? And what was the influence to say, yes, we're going to sign on to help this organization?
Well, when you walk in the room and you listen to, listen to her talk, listen to her put it out there, what they're doing and how they're doing it, how do you say no? And because of, other people in your life that's had issues, that had different things that have gone wrong, and you're going, wow, now I can actually be a part of the solution. I can actually step up and help those that are actually putting their time in to make sure the system works right. And, that's one thing. And of course, when the boss lady says we're doing it, it's done. So that makes it easy.
Yes, I think your wife could probably run the world in such a better way than it's being run right now with all the confusion. I have no doubts about that at all.
I think a lot of us would sign up for that.
Tricia, tell me a little bit about the folks that are actually working boots on the ground to make sure that justice is served. Will mentioned earlier Ricky, and I'm glad you gave the rest of the detail, and now he's part of your team. So tell us about some of the other folks and how they play a role.
Yeah, so on staff, we are 10 people, if you include Ricky, who's our community engagement manager. We're really lucky to have him. We have, so myself and 1 and 2 other lawyers now who are on staff playing that role. We have an investigator, a paralegal, an intake analyst, who's someone who processes all the applications that come in, right? So the reality is the need is really great in our 5-state region. It's estimated between 1 and 3,000 people are actually innocent and sitting in prison. We have a wait list of about 800 people who are waiting for assistance at any time. So even on our team, the vast majority of the folks are committed to doing the legal work, investigating, right, being lawyers, and then we have 5 other lawyers we get from our partners, so that we end up with a total of 8 lawyers, investigator, paralegal, intake analyst, and then we also have an office manager, right, and a development associate. But so I feel really lucky to work with folks who are so committed to what we need to do, what the work we need to do, both for ourselves, as an organization, and in our society to be more just. How are we challenging our own views and our own systemic biases and our own role, right, in upholding white supremacy in this world, that we can then make the difference in the system? What does it mean to work in a nonprofit? And so these are things that the team asks and discusses on the regular. We also have a number of interns who join us. So this summer we have 7 interns with us from all around the country. We're doing a virtual internship, right? No one's sitting in the same room. And they are committed and they are asking these questions. And I think someone asked me recently, how do you keep going when things are so hard? Or how do you keep going? Because we lose too, right? People don't talk about that. They talk about the folks that came home, but they don't talk about when we lose, right? And Ricky Kidd lost 11 times before he came home.
Wow.
And I just think that I'm so lucky to be with a team that has such a vision for what a just world really looks like, that you can have a bad day, but you can go talk to your client and know they keep going. How do you not keep going, right? And that if I have a day where I'm down, I've got a team who can carry me, and everyone will step in and do what needs to be done. So I feel very lucky that I work with the best colleagues that I think anyone could have.
Well, you need to bottle that, and then you can sell it.
I wish I could.
Nonprofits,
no one else can have it. It's only ours.
I think that's something that nonprofits do struggle with. How do you keep everybody on the same page and keep mission driven? And you raise the point of, and sometimes we do lose. How do you pick up those bootstraps then when you do lose? And when Ricky Kidd loses the first time around, as opposed to finally being able to be exonerated.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about this because for many of us, and myself included, and Rachel Wester, who's the staff attorney in our office, I started in the death penalty world. And so I was representing people convicted of capital murder who was sentenced to death. And my very first client was innocent. And I started representing him in 2006. His conviction was overturned in 2010. In 2013, which is when I started here at Midwest Innocence Project, the Alabama Supreme Court reinstated his conviction. So essentially putting him back on death row, even though he'd never left death row in that time. And it wasn't actually until 2019 that he walked out. And so I remember very vividly in 2013 when we got the news that the court had reinstated his conviction, I was actually at the MIP holiday party, right? We were all together in that minute. And I went into the bathroom and I just cried. And I just cried and cried and cried and sort of, got it out for that moment. And then when we went back to work, we sat and talked about it. And we talk about it as a team. What does that mean? And what does it mean to keep ourselves mentally well and healthy? Because we can't help anyone if we are not in a place to do that. And processing what it is to work in a system that is unjust while trying to achieve justice. I mean, that's not lost on us. And so if we can talk about it and we can name it and we can own it, we know we can change it. So.
Do you all need volunteers ever? How do you work as an organization that way? Because not everybody's a lawyer. Will's not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. How, is there a role?
There is a role for everyone, and there's a great need for non-lawyers, actually. We have lawyers, and we have wonderful law firms who work with us on different kinds of screening. But things that we struggle with that we don't know much about are graphic design, right? Social media, community engagement, anything that has to do with video, right? We're lucky right now that we've got the technology to make this work, but we have lawyers that don't know how to do non-lawyer things. So we need all of those folks to help us know what we don't know, right? What does design look like? What does the operationalization of an organization look like, right? All of those things are vastly needed, and we appreciate anyone who wants to come and help with that work.
So what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Absolutely. They can email us at office@themip.org or go to our website at themip.org, and there's information on volunteering there as well.
And I would encourage people to go to your website. It was so interesting to be reading through the cases and the people that you've helped. And when you read it, and maybe, Will, this was your reaction when you heard some of these, you just kind of shake your head.
You look at it and you go, How did that happen? How did we miss this? How did these simple things go through the cracks? Or, what was the process of how you get to that? And that is one thing that, sort of sits beside yourself of, how can now I be a part to help make sure that these things don't happen to other people down the road? And, that's the caveat of what we're trying to do, is that the more we talk about it, the more we put it out there, the more we understand that it's not perfect. But we have to understand that as a people, that it's not going to be perfect, but we can work to make it as good as it can get, and also make the right decisions at the right times. And that's the one thing about it. And that's what sort of forces you to go, I got to do something. I got to keep being a part of it. I got to keep talking about it every chance I get, so that somebody else is like, hey, have you heard of NIP? Have you ever heard of this, that, the other? Just try to make sure everyone is aware of the good work that they're doing, but also the opportunity to help somebody that needs you on a day-to-day.
You want to add to that, Tricia?
No, to me, I'm just very grateful, especially when I hear someone who talks about our organization and our mission, that folks have such belief in us. It just means a lot.
Well, thank you for letting us be a part of it. That's for sure.
And everybody can be a part of it, especially on
That's
July
right.
30th, for sure. I wanted to go back to something you said, Tricia, that I was really surprised, and that's the rate of wrongful incarceration in this region. Is there any research or any anecdotal or hard evidence of why that is?
So the research is it's about 2 to 5% of all people who are incarcerated are wrongfully convicted. And what I think is really most interesting to know about that research is that's about people who are in prison. There's really no research on people who are charged with misdemeanors and other kinds of small felonies, who I think are even more likely to plead guilty to get out because they can't afford cash bail and they can just go home and they need their job, right? So the statistics don't yet exist, but I imagine it would be much higher. We know certain causes of wrongful convictions, different kinds of things. Like I talked about eyewitness identification reform, police misconduct. One of the other things that we don't talk about quite as much is the impact the death penalty has on wrongful convictions, right? So when you look at false confessions make up, I think, somewhere around 30% of all DNA exonerations. But when you look at it as a homicide case, only the homicides, it's over 60% of people falsely confess. And it's because the death penalty is on the table, right? So they're being threatened with the potential to be executed. So then they'll confess to take a plea to avoid being executed for something they didn't commit. We've now exonerated more people from death row than we have executed, right? So it's an interesting thing. They estimate 1 in every 10 people, that's on death row. So we really need to be thinking about those things and what are the system pressure points, right? And there's a lot of pressure points. We can talk about all of them. We can talk about, is it funding on the front end of public defenders? What's the parity between what a public defender gets versus the prosecutor? And then thinking about the fact that, public defenders have to hire their own investigators. Police often conduct the investigation for prosecutors, right? So how do you look at the parity of funding in how much money a prosecutor's office gets in addition to what the police are doing compared to public defenders, which are woefully underfunded? Here in Missouri, where we have the highest need on our wait list, Missouri is ranked 49th in the country for funding for public defenders. The public defender has sued the state of Missouri to say, we cannot do this. We cannot meet our constitutional obligations to represent people. And so it's part of our job to make sure we're educating people about that and helping them think about those things as we as citizens, what is our role in that, right? What is our role in providing these systems that are unjust?
Well, we're grateful that you all exist and that you're out there doing the hard work and the heavy lifting for those folks who have been, wrongly accused and convicted and, wait years and hope that they are exonerated. It's just amazing. And we wish you great success with the event. I hope you'll record it as well, because then you can push it out again, right?
Absolutely.
Well, we thank you.
Well, we hope to see you there, Ruth,
I've already got it on my calendar. I'm zooming in because Will can make all the great graphics. And we want to thank our listeners to Casey Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by Charitable Communications, and we're proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation. If you'd like to be a guest or underwriting opportunities, check out our website at caseycaresonline.org and spread the love. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Casey Cares Online. Thank you for listening to Casey Cares. Bye-bye.